Today's video, to bundle or not to bundle? That's the question. Particularly, I'm going over the Softube Plugin Collection version 5, but this applies to so many of the other manufacturers from whom you've probably received emails this week advertising some kind of special that they're offering on their plugin collection. Discussion of the value coming up next. So if you watched my video a while back, just about a year ago, I suppose, on the should I buy Studio One outright or subscribe to that Sphere option for a subscription, you'll know that I will be analytical when trying to make a decision about purchasing something. And no doubt I did the same thing here. I've gotten ads for this plugin collection multiple times this year, and each time the price has come down a little bit. And finally, this time, they got me. The reason they got me is I found value at this price. And that seems like a really simple way to look at it. Like, am I going to get value at this price? But the way that I'm looking at it is always digging into those details of not just, ooh, that's a great price. Like ordinarily this thing would be $900 and it's on sale for $595, but I have a coupon code on top of that because I'm a, Softube loyal customer or whatever, and I get the whole thing for $275, so $900 or $275 must be a great deal, buy it. Never do I think that way. I will labor over what all is included in the thing. So in this case, we're talking about this guy right here, the Volume 5 Plugin Collection. And if you scroll down on Softube's page, you'll see all of the things that come with it. Right? And there's quite a number of different plugins. So how did I evaluate this combination? So if you've watched any of my videos, that I am a fan of the Console One stuff. And so getting additional plugins, modules, whatever you want to call them, and channel strips for my Console One is something that I'm going to look to every time that Softube comes out with something. I actually bypassed the last one that they came out with, but I did buy the API, or American Class A, strip. So in this particular bundle, what was in here was the American Class A that I already had, so that was part of why I got the discount. The Summit Audio Grand Channel, which also is a standalone processor, along with its EQ and compressor components, which are also standalone processors. The YCQ-MP, which is one that's very much more surgical than any other Console One stuff. The Drummer S73 Intelligent Master Processor, which right now I think is the closest thing that they have to a bus compressor. I think everybody wants them to do the SSL bus compressors and all of that, but they haven't yet. The Trident A-Range, which is a highly sought-after EQ. I haven't had a chance to play with it yet, so I look forward to that. The Passive Active Pack, which gives you a passive EQ, an active EQ, and then another kind of weird, some kind of EQ that's a weird, I don't even know how you describe it, but that's in there as well. The Fet Compressor, it's old, 2009, but gets great reviews, and supposedly as Fet compressors go, sounds really good. I look forward to being able to incorporate that into some of my other channel strips. And then the Transient Shaper. And if you don't know a lot about Console One, when you go into here, you can replace the whole strip with strips that you have. The American Class A, the British Class A, the SSL 4000E, which is what it comes with. I'm actually looking at the shape, not the strip. Sorry about that. There we go. The Empirical Labs is one I don't have. The Summit Audio Grand Channel is one that came with this bundle, so that comes in as a whole strip. And the yeah, so that's the ones that come in as the whole strip. But you can also plug different sections of the thing in. So if you go back over here to the shape, you can see in this dynamics shape section, I can add the transient shaper in there instead. In the EQ, you can see that I have the passive active that I can load in to the middle of an SSL strip or one of the other ones. Those are the American Class A, the British Class A. The focusing is the other one that I said is kind of a weird one that came with the passive active. Then there's the Summit and the Weiss and the Trident are in here. And then also in the compressor section, you can see we have the Drummer and the Fet and the Summit Audio and the Weiss Mastering Maximizer. So these are all pieces that all work with Console 1 and outside of Console 1 as well, which is not, I would say is not the norm, right? Like the British Class A is not something that you can get outside of the Console 1. So being able to use these in combination or as substitutions inside of the Console 1 makes it so that you can have some unique scenarios. As a quick example of that, not to dig into, Console 1 so much, but if you look at my strip options here, I can get the American Class A or let's say the British Class A, but let's say I wanted that just the British Class A on the input and output, but then for the shape section, I wanted to use I'm pressing the wrong buttons because I'm not looking at what I'm doing over here. So I want to use the Transient Shaper, right? So we're going to put that in here for the dynamic shape section. And then for the EQ, I'm going to put the, let's say I put the Weiss in here, right? So you can see now I've got the Weiss EQ in there. And then for the compressor, I'm going to load in the Fet Compressor. Right, so now I've got a channel strip that is none of the other channel strips in whole. I've got that Weiss EQ where I can do things like this that the other EQs inside of the Console 1 don't have that kind of specificity in the cues, and being able to do such sharp cuts like this all the way down to that tiny little region. The Fet Compressor at the same time. Any of these combinations can work, and this is why I like the Console 1 concept so much. So if we just stopped right there, that might have been enough for me to go for the whole $275 I had to spend on this thing. Other items that have tempted me before, the amp room, right? And this is a guitar amp simulator. And I wanted to get this one a couple of different times because it's a third-party guitar processor. I'm not a great guitar player. I can play. So the better the sound I can get, the better my playing tends to sound. And I don't think that that's always the case, that you can just take like complete garbage playing and put it through a decent sounding amp and have it come out sounding good. But this certainly helps me. Now, what I have been using is the newer version of Ampire, right? So that's what we have here on the screen. The difference here is this. So in Ampire, I have loaded up this guy, which is the Marshall head and a Marshall-like cab. I don't know, they're not branded, so I can't really do that so much. And then did the same thing here in Amp Room, and I played my guitar through both of these with similar kind of sounding parts, and the Amp Room sounds distinctly better to me. Feels like it reacts better to the playing and that kind of a thing. I like the interface better. I think it's got some more possibilities. You can do splits and you can do routing and you can do all kinds of really heavy combinations of things in here. It has a bunch of models that are in here. It came also with the Marshall Plexi Super Lead and then also the Marshall Cabinet Collection. So if you're looking for a Marshall sound, that combination of all of those definitely can get that. But it's got some other stuff in there as well for, Vox kinds of sounds or some of the other same basic amp type collections that are in most Amp Sims base package. The other benefit, though, on this one was surprisingly for as much more complex as it could be, and for, really the fact that it's a third-party unit and the sounding better. Take a look at the CPU meter. Right, here's Ampere at 8%. Here's Amp Room at 3 or 4. Running the exact same amp cab connection. No pedals, no anything else, just an amp and a cab. I actually ran a parallel processed left-right split of 2 different amps and 2 different cabs on the Marshall, like you would use the splitter tool in Studio One to run 2 Ampires next to each other. And the 2 of those together in Amp Room use the CPU of 1 Ampere. So that's an extra, side benefit to that. The next one that I've been looking at along the way, and I get an ad for this one all the time, is the Tape, which is the tape saturation plugin. It works as a mix effects in Studio One, so you can put it on a master and have it apply down to the buses. You can put it on the buses, have it apply down to the tracks, and various different combinations of those things. Those mix effects actually affect things at the audio engine itself. And so I've really wanted to dig into that one, but I've never wanted to pay for it. Never wanted to buy it separately because it's definitely a subtle effect that I think is additive. And just really, I think you have to take a lot of time to dig into and see how it really works and how it really sounds. And compared to some of the other ones that are built into Studio One or the CTC One product or the couple of new emulations, I think there are some combinations there that can definitely be fun to get a real, more vintage sound, more analog sound, if you will, out of the whole thing. So Tape is going to be one of those that's going to be fun. SAR1 on the Reverb. So this is one, again, that I've thought about a number of times getting, but didn't really want to pay for. I was using an algorithmic reverb from Overloud called Reverb. I actually had brought that over from Cakewalk. So it was the Cakewalk branded version of that. So it was a trimmed down version of Reverb. But lately, out of the blue, it'll just start going at 170 dB. It seems like so loud you could swear the tweeters were just going to blow out the front of your speakers. That was the end of that reverb when I identified that that's what it was. Gone. I had to find another algorithmic reverb. Not crazy about the ones in Studio One. I think that they're usable, but to me, they don't sound smooth. They sound a little metallic, a little bit grainy. So I've been looking around for an algorithmic reverb. So when this one came up as a part of the bundle, it was like one of those little special sauce things where I said, hey, that could really add something to my productions. It's also a straightforward to use processor. So, if I pull that thing up on the screen, you can see that it's a handful of sliders at the bottom, which I've got mapped to my FaderPort very easily. And a couple of these selectors up here, which are also mapped. So my 8 faders control the 5 faders at the bottom of this plugin, and then those 3 sections up at the top for choosing values. Really easy to get in and out of that hardware at a hands-on kind of level. Yes, I could absolutely use my mouse to control it, but it just looking at it, lended itself well to being controlled by the FaderPort. And I went through a handful of the presets, haven't really dug into a lot of the details on the thing, but for an algorithmic reverb, for snare plates, and vocal reverbs, which are the 2 primary places that I will find this useful, I think that's going to be great. Now there is a little brother version of this called the SAR1R, has less complexity even than this one. That also came in this pack. Extra bonuses. So this is where this is what I would buy ends, and here's the extra stuff that I happen to get in the process of buying those things. And part of, I think, kind of what goes into my thought process of, so what extra stuff that I didn't really actually care about am I going to get in this bundle? And in this case, the Harmonics Analog Saturation Processor, which has been reviewed as being really nice. Again, haven't had any time yet to play with it. The Fix, Flanger, Phaser, and Doubler. Not sure exactly what the Fix piece is. I'm sure once I research a little bit more about that. I've listened to the demos. I've watched the little intro videos on the things. The Flanger and the Phaser certainly already have those effects available inside of Studio One. But these will be other options. Maybe I like the interfaces better. Maybe they sound better. The Doubler. I don't think we have a doubler. There might be one someplace in there as a part of a delay or some other bit. I've had a need for a doubler a handful of times. Again, another one of those could be fun to play with. The tube delay. The tube delay is a cool little plugin. I played around with it. It's got a lot of character to it. I think more character than the analog delay that's built into Studio One in the newest version, even with all the drive characteristics and whatnot. This one has less flexibility to it, but it definitely has some, I don't know, it's like I said, it's character, right? So here's what the flanger, right, is this guy here. The phaser, all right, here's the phaser, so you can see we've got the, you know, the phaser and the flanger, and then also the doubler, which I'll drag that guy in there, and we kind of see what that interface is. These are very straightforward, couple of knobs. That's, you know, some on-off kind of stuff. Nothing super fancy. And then the analog, or I'm sorry, the tube delay, which is this guy. I would be afraid to turn this channel on right now. It's loaded up with all of these things in a row. But that's your tube delay. So you've got your drive and your delay time. You can tempo sync it, change your feedback, dry wet, and then high cut, low cut. Very simple, straightforward, but again, seems to have some character. And then there's some other extras on the synth side of things. I've mostly got the synth stuff covered in terms of Sample Tank, Sonic Synth, and the Arturia Analog Lab 5, some of the stuff that's built into the thing I can never remember the name of. That's gosh darn it. It's this thing, Presence. So some of the Presence XT libraries, the piano library, the orchestral libraries, pretty much got keyboards covered, but this one added Statement Lead, which is really leads and pads, Modular, which is cool for learning how synthesis works, Heartbeat, which is a vintage analog drum machine kind of a thing, the Monument Bass, not sure how I'm going to use that. I can't think of a lot of cases where I use synth bass, but hey, who knows? And then Parallels, which is more kind of leads and pads, experimental kinds of sounds, that sort of thing. So those were extras. Another one of the benefits I think is kind of cool in the way that the different pieces and parts work in here is these feed into one another. That's not what I wanted to load. Amp room. In fact, that's the reason I have the tuner up there, is because I actually really don't like the amp room tuner. The PreSonus tuner, a little strobe mode and all of that, I personally think is a better choice. So going into amp room, which I'm trying to find here on my screen. Ah, there it is. So in Amp Room, what's kind of cool here is on the bottom of the interface, you can see, you know, like Studio Effects, and you can see I can actually put in that tube delay that we were just looking at as a module right here. And it's the same tube delay that's over there that I can use outside of here. Same thing with the Trident A-Range. You know, I could stick a Trident A-Range EQ right in the middle of that, or a SAR1R reverb. And again, you know, you've got that same kind of interface. So some of these mix and match, you can bring them in and out of that modular system. You can bring them in and out of the, I can't remember the other connections that they have, but it's another thing that makes, you know, some of the Softube stuff cool, is that they mix and match them in and out of one another. So I hope this video has been useful for you in not just looking at this Softube bundle, but looking at any of the bundles and thinking about how they work. What makes them interesting to you? What makes them worth any money to you? Again, hope you found it valuable. For me, you know, it's always an analytical process going through this, trying to find, how do I want to spend my money? Because I'm cheap in that regard. I don't like to spend my money on stuff I'm not going to use. So a collection has to have a bunch of stuff in it I'm going to use. And I think this one does. If you found this video great, or even just okay, please give me the thumbs up. Like, share, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. That would be helpful to me. Thanks for watching the video. Hope you got something useful out of it. Have a good one.